I'm Billy STULL. We're here in Wimberley, Texas at my mastering studio. I'm a musician, recording engineer, and for the last 9 or 10 years, been a mastering engineer. I've had the opportunity to work with the legendary Mr. Rupert Neve on a product that we've come up with. It started out to be a box for me, but it wound up being a product that everybody can use. It's pretty amazing, pretty exciting, and we've had a lot of interest of people that want to hear and see what this unit can do. So the purpose of this DVD we're doing today is to demonstrate the capabilities so we can show you what it can do for you in your facility and for your clients. Now let me give you a tour of the MasterPiece. The signal flow comes in through the right-hand section here, which is the input section. You have -10 or +4 as a choice. With one button, you change both meters to input or output. You have 180 degrees phase on each channel. And if you notice, those turn red. There's 142 illuminated push buttons on here, and they indicate to you the status of the unit. Things that are red you want to watch out for. Of course, phase being important would turn red and alert you to that. Then it gets into the input gain stages. The controls for this, we have a special feature. As you know, on a lot of equipment, it starts in the middle, and as you turn to the right, it adds gain, and you turn to the left, it decreases gain. In this unit, we start all the way to the left, and we have increasing gain all the way about 180 degrees. So that gives us a lot of precision. Now, we want to reduce gain. We engage the button above it, which turns red, lets you know that you're reducing gain, and you have the full rotation of the knob there. All of that adds up to more precision for the input gain, of course, on both sides. Then the signal flows into the low and high pass filter section, which you have 6 choices of low and 6 choices of high pass filter. Then from there, the signal goes over and daisy chains through the unit like this, and then exits through the lower section, which is your output gain, and the image control, which is a stereo function. Back to this first module, this is the 1515 peak equalizer, and if you notice, there's 16 choices on each band. There's 3 bands with 16 choices. That gives you a total of 48 choices of frequencies, lots of choices. We have the same feature on the gain control in that when you engage the plus or minus button, you either have plus or minus on your gain. This gain control gives you plus or minus 14 dB at 1 dB increments. When you engage the zoom button, it changes it from plus or minus 14 to plus or minus 4 with 1/4 dB increments. The Q control is this knob right here. All the way to the right is narrow Q, all the way to the left is wide Q. And this is a more narrow Q and a more wide Q than Mr. Neve has done on any of his previous designs. The narrow Q can get down to just like 1 note if you want to. You do have a side chain control on each section, which we'll get into a little bit later about the side chain. And you also have an in and an out of each block. This block, this block, this block. And then you have a master control if you want to disengage the whole module. So if you notice, when you disengage the module, all of the lights go out, so that lets you know that it's not working. When you engage the module at the bottom, then it's working, and you can compare what you're doing in each block of EQ with the in and out button of each section. Then the signal flows into the shelf equalizer, which has the same features. It's plus or minus 14 with the minus control. You've got zoom that puts it down to plus or minus 4 with 1/4 dB. And this also has the sheen feature, which is Mr. Neve's alternate curve for the shelf. It's a more gentle curve. It's not quite as steep as a lot of the shelves are, and it gives you the choice of the steep shelf or the more gentle shelf, which we call sheen. Very transparent. It doesn't change the timbre of the music, but it adds just very, very glossy highs. The EQ in this is just amazing. People have just raved about it. Also, you have a side chain control for this section. You can side chain just that, and you have the in and out feature of that block as well. Also, you have 8 choices of frequencies for the high shelf, eight different choices for the shelf. Below that, we have the low shelf EQ, same functions on the gain controls. In addition, we have glow, which is Mr. Neve's alternate curve to the low shelf. It's the converse of sheen. So you can add a low shelf with the glow or without the glow if you want to hit it hard, or a more gentle shelf, depending on which way you want to use it. You also have 8 choices of frequencies there. Same thing, you can sidechain that block, and you can also do the in and out of just that section. Now the signal gets to this section here, which is the classic circuit. This is a circuit that we've designed, which it's the essence of the classic Neve sound that's so famous from the early 70s and 80s. We have sort of distilled that sound into a new circuit that has what we think is the best qualities of that particular feature. Now you can choose to engage that sound on your program material with these buttons here. You can bypass this module or you can engage it. When you do, you also have the choice with this input filter section of applying this classic tone to just the lows or the mids or the highs or any combination. So you don't have to use the classic sound over the whole spectrum if you don't want to. The input filter, as you see, the blocks are across the whole unit there. Everywhere you see the blue block, you have the option to use the input filter and use that feature in low, mid, or high. You determine where the low section is with the adjacent button here. With this button being out, then your low band starts at 100. With the button in, the low band starts at 200. So you have a choice of 100 or 200 for the low band. The high band, you have a choice of 1.2 or 2K, which shapes the region of the high frequency band. And then you have a phase reversal for the mid band, which I'll explain as we get into some other section there. There again, you can disengage the whole module with these buttons. Some people say, well, why would you want to use classic and why would you want to just put it on part of the spectrum? Lots of reasons for that. Depending on the source material, the classic can add what I call good distortion. It can make it silky, it can make it more edgy, it can make it more punchy. By just engaging, say, the mid band or the highs, it adds a texture to that particular range. It puts a little edge on it. Sometimes focuses the vocals. If you use it just on the low band, there's a little bit of what I call transformer compression that will hold it back and make it a little bit tighter. If you use it full spectrum, a lot of times digital recordings that are in the rock vein that need to have some bite to them, a little more analog type real world sound, you can achieve that effect by using the classic across the whole band. Or you may just want to add your classic tone to just the bass and kick on the bottom end. That's the reason for all these various options that you have. Now we go into the next module, which is the 1710, which includes tape texture, auxiliary, and variable phase. The tape texture is a really neat section. It's actually a tape recorder circuit, everything except the tape. It has a tape recorder drive, it has a playback, it actually has it's a magnetic circuit, and you have the option of driving that tape recorder with the saturation control with this knob right here. You can engage it, and then there again with the input filter, you have the choice of using this tape texture sound on just the lows or the mids or the highs or any combination. For instance, the lows and highs, and exclude the mids. I find this very valuable depending on what the source material is. If it's something that's, say, a digital recording that really is in need of this type of sound, you might use it across the whole spectrum. If the recording is pretty well done and doesn't need that particular treatment, I've found that by using the tape texture on the low end only, one of my favorite settings is under 100, for instance, you can add huge bottom end. You can add bass for days, but it doesn't affect the output. It's not like an EQ thing, it's more like a density type of thing is the best way I can describe it. You also have the choice of using that, there again, under 200 or under 100. As you turn this to the right, it adds more EQ and it adds more compression. So actually, this is a little unusual in that in approximately this position here, say 10 or 11 o'clock, that's your minimum setting. As you turn it to the right, you're adding low-end EQ and tape-like compression. As you go to the left, you're adding gain, but not the EQ or the compression. So you might think of it as, when you go to the right, it's like 15 IPS with a head bump effect, or when you go to the left, it's like a tape recorder at 30 IPS. Now, the next stage of the signal flow goes into the auxiliary section. This section allows you to interface outboard gear of any type into the system with just a push of the button. I like to use a Neve 2254 set of vintage compressors. Well, with just a push of the button through an insert loop in the back that's very carefully designed to interface things into the system and still keep this unit isolated, you can engage the outboard gear, and then you have the option of using your favorite outboard gear in just the low position, mid-band, or high. You don't have to use it across the whole spectrum if you don't want to. So a lot of times, if you really want, there again, a huge bass, you can go in and just use the 2254 on the bottom end. Or if you had a effects unit and you wanted to add reverb to the mid-band, just the vocals and the snare, say. You know, a lot of times the groups like to add chorus over the whole track. Well, that usually wipes out the bass. Well, you can engage the mid-band and the high, add the chorus, but exclude the bottom end so you don't have that effect. You could actually run a reel-to-reel tape recorder through this section and have real-time tape sound through this section as well. Also, the auxiliary has sidechain capability too. I've mentioned sidechain, and obviously the next module right here is compressor modules. In this system, you have the option, just by engaging these sidechain buttons here, of sidechaining any block of the peak equalizer, any block of the shelf equalizer, or any outboard equalizer through the auxiliary. Sidechain is where you can do frequency-dependent compression, used a lot of times for sibilants or resonant bass notes, or say low-mid areas that that kind of get muddy at times when a lot of things are going on, or in the vocal range when a vocalist might start getting loud and there's some what I call offending frequencies in the vocal range. With the sidechain, you can set the compressor to catch those things. So you have the option of sidechaining and using the onboard EQ and using an outboard EQ for additional EQ, or you can use an outboard EQ for the sidechain, use the onboard EQ for the regular equalization. So as you can see, there's all kinds of combinations. This is a system made to work together. You don't have to get out and hook up a bunch of patch cords to do side chains like we used to do in the old days. With just the push of the button, everything works together. Another thing about the auxiliary is you can also use that in especially rock things as another gain stage. You can add another piece of outboard gear. You can actually stack up against the components in here, which include a lot of transformers. You can stack up the signal, which will give you that drive, that perceived volume, and you can get another gain stage by doing that too. Gives you a louder record, which is in demand these days. The next section that the signal flows into is called vary phase. Now this is a variable phase. As you know, up here is 180-degree phase, which is very common. This is not common. It's a variable phase, which is 10, 20, 30, 40. It's incremental phase, which allows you to change the phase in small degrees. And with the combination of the input filter, you can change the phase within the bands. I found it useful in correcting phase in recordings that might have some problems in the phasing, especially in the bands, or live recordings where they have opposing microphones. And there's some phase cancellation in the mid-band. You might flip the phase of the whole thing and it corrects the mid-band, but it wipes out the bass. With this, you're able to go into just the mid-band and do some corrections. Another thing that I find with a certain setting that's also described on the website, you can do scooping, which is thinning out the lower mids using phase instead of EQ. It's a very unique way to get that pop record sound. The signal flows next into the compressors. They're full-featured compressors, brand new designed. Everything in this is all new circuits. And what I particularly like about them is two things. Using the soft knee, they can be very, very transparent, using the regular function, and using a little bit of makeup gain to overdrive, you can actually add color, you can add horsepower, as I call it, more body to the recording, and you're in control of that. Of course, you got the regular features that you would have on a compressor. They are linkable, and here again, you can use the compressor just on the lows or the mids or the highs or any combination. A lot of times you may just want to compress the bass or the bottom end. Sometimes if you just select the mids and highs, you can actually turn vocals up, turn vocals down just by a little adjustment here, or you can do things to those areas without affecting the bass, for instance, by using the input filter in conjunction with the compressor. Then the next thing that it goes into from the compressors, it goes out through the output stage, which is your output gain controls, and then the stereo function, which is image control. This is a very unique feature and very useful. When you engage this button right here, that engages the ambience control, and this allows you to take the ambience, the reverb you might say, that is on the recording, and you can magnify that by going to the right and bring it back in to any degree you want, or you can reduce it by going to the left. Now we can provide a more technical explanation of how that does that, but here in a little bit we'll give you an audio sample so you can actually hear it. Many times just a little bit of, just a touch of that on a recording that has proper ambience on it gives a sparkle that you can't get any other way and sounds great. Other times if there's too much reverb you can reduce it, and if you need more of the actual ambience in the room you can make the room bigger by using that. By depressing this button in the depth control, this allows you to change the sound stage. You can change the perspective of the instruments on the stage. You can move them forward or backwards. We'll show you a little bit of that later on the audio sample. And right here, these are master bypass buttons. And they're red, obviously, because if you're bypassed, that's important. When you depress those, it disengages all of these modules so that you can instantly tell what you've done to the recording by engaging the bypass, and it bypasses all of the modules. Now, one other thing that I want to show you is that this is a modular unit. You can configure these modules any way you want. By taking this thumb screw and this handle, and you can even hot swap these, you can remove these modules. As you see, they're all steel, and you can put them in a different sequence within the chain. For instance, if you want the compressor first in the chain before the EQ, all you do is just move them around. They're made to do that. You may have two engineers. One engineer likes it one way and the other likes it the other, and they can just change it like they want. Or you may have a project that requires a different sequence. So this gives you the option of configuring this very easily any way that you want, and it can make a big difference in how a particular engineer likes to work. And that's the quick tour of the MasterPiece. Obviously, it can be as simple as just running something through it. It'll improve it and sound better. Especially this master section. It's amazing what it'll do to digital recordings. Then you have all the modules that you can engage and use it from there. So it can be as simple or as deep into a project as you might require for fixing things or for custom things or enhancing things. Now that I've given you the verbal tour, let's go over to the console and I'll give you some sonic samples of what things sound like. Many times just running the source material through the master module of the MasterPiece will give you increased dimension, enhancement, apparent gain, and just a better overall sound. This is due to the amazing circuitry in the master module and the output transformers that are part of that circuitry. Here's a sample of something before and then after running through the master module without any other processing. Many times the next step will be to add some compression. The compression will reduce the peak so that you can get the overall level louder on the final project. However, with the makeup gain, we can make it even louder if we want to, or the same volume. And so I will add some gentle compression. This is supposed to be subtle on this particular setting. We can make it harder if we want to. But the next thing you hear will be the same project that we're working on with a little bit of compression and makeup gain.
In the morning light, I know that you are gone, child of the night, hiding from the sun.
Now I'm going to go over to the 1517 module, which includes the high shelf and the low shelf, and I'm going to add some high shelf to this project, showing you the transparency of the high end. The shelf is beautiful. You can add lots of high end without noticing it. It just brings out the air in the top end and beautiful sound. So now I'm going to add a little bit. I'm going to use the zoom, so it's a very fine control on it. I'm going to add a little bit of high end shelf and let you hear that addition to the sound that we're processing now.
Hiding from the sun, lurking in the shadows, I feel you in my mind, I hear you whisper gently, I'm gonna make you mine.
This particular project, at this point, I'm not going to add any low shelf or classic at this time, but we'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to go over to the tape texture. As we told you before, this is a reel-to-reel tape recorder simulation circuit, and a real common way that I like to use this is to use it on just the low end, under 100. So the next thing you're going to hear is tape texture applied just to the low end, under 100. The first part of it, you'll hear it, and then I'll insert the tape texture. You'll hear an increase in the bass, but the output of the total output won't increase. It's not like a increasing EQ, it's more like a density type thing. So here's what this sounds like using tape texture under 100 only. Now we'll go to the auxiliary section. With this section, you're able to engage outboard gear of your choice into the system, and with the push of the button through a loop in the back, you can engage your gear, and then you have the choice of using that in the low, mid, or high application. So it changes your full range gear into multiband if you want to use it that way. I have a pair of Neve 2254 compressors hooked up through the system, vintage gear, and I'm going to engage it. You'll hear it without it, and then with the gear, I'll do it full range, and then I'll do it just the low band so that you hear the difference in applying it just to a section rather than overall. Now let's go to the variable phase. We call it vari-phase, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of scooping in the low-mid area. As we'll select the mid band, we'll reverse the phase of the mid, and then when we engage it with the knobs all the way to the right, we have no change in the sound. Now, as we turn the knobs gradually to the left, it will thin out the track in the low mids, causing the scooping effect. And actually, I'm going to go too far just to show you the exaggeration of that effect, and then I'm going to come back to a setting that I think sounds good for that. Now, another feature that we want to tell you about, and we've had a lot of questions about and people want to hear, is the image control, which contains the ambience control as well as the depth. So the first sample that we'll hear, I'll play some material that's pretty ambient, and then I will gradually increase the ambience that's on the recording, and then I will back it off and decrease the ambience that's on the recording. So as you listen, you'll hear the ambience magnified and then reduced.
Longing for a companion, you beckon me to stay. 10,000 moons have risen since you've seen the light of day. I love you and I fear you, but you know I must resist the hunger of your passion, the danger of your kiss.
Now then, the next thing that I want to give you an example of is the image control, which includes the depth control. After you engage image control, a secondary function, when you go to image, that gives you both of these knobs working to change the sound stage. So I'll play some material and it's going to be very radical. Hang on to your chair because I'm going to just completely remix the whole sound stage. I'm going to be exaggerated about this, but I want to show you how you can move the vocalist around, you can move things around, and complete a different recording from the one you started with. Now I'm going to show you an A-B using the material, a song that we started with. I'll play it just exactly as it came in for mastering. And then I'll play an example after we've used all the features to do a final sound so we can show you what the MasterPiece can do to music that may come into a mastering studio.
Since you've seen the light of day, I love you.
And as you can see, there's many things you can do with the MasterPiece. It can be very simple, or you can go very detailed, and you can be very creative. One of our customers said that he called it a musical instrument. He said, you learn to play this, and it makes things very musical. As you chain things together and you drive things together, the combinations of the modules that you may put together, you are the player of this instrument and helps you create amazing new music. One of the comments also was, one guy said he'd been listening in halftones and now he heard it in color. Another one of our customers sent me an email. He said, this thing is amazing. He said, it's Walmart in, Gucci out. So obviously they're very fanatical, and they wouldn't be fanatical if it didn't just sound amazing. But we want to thank you for your interest in the MasterPiece. Hopefully this DVD has cleared up some of the questions you might have. But if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to contact us at legendaryaudio.com, our website, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.